Every time you have a celebration, what do you try to make sure is there? Music.
I find them doing pretty much anything they can to sustain the dream.
Yes, many day jobs over the years, for sure.
And I see that quite often. The three-job person, you know, with the flexible jobs. You know, how can I go on tour? What's my profession? A bartender can come in and out of their workplace and do pretty well.
3 jobs, but I think I do that because they're flexible enough for me to be able to play music.
My name is Shane Zweigart, and I guess my middle name is Garrett. Yeah. I play drums in a band called Wire Faces. I play drums and sing.
In one of the best music communities in the fucking state.
In the galaxy.
In the universe.
I'm also a dad, so yeah. And then I'm also the caretaker for the Quaker Meeting House. I feel extremely lucky and fortunate to have found this situation, to be a caretaker for this place, you know, because you know, the rent is reduced here, but in return I basically, you know, keep the grounds up and make sure everything that it's good to go, everything's clean. But you know, this type of scenario is not very typical, so.
We were just talking about people taking up like kind of unusual living situations. I was the caretaker at the Edwards House Bed and Breakfast for several years, just because it was a way for me to live in Old Town and live affordably. The same as Tomas living in the temple.
Tomas and Max.
If I wasn't in this scenario, I'd be probably living somewhere with a roommate or something like that, you know, trying to make it work out. Because it's just impossible as a single parent to be able to afford, you know, anything. I've got other friends that are single parents. They've been waiting for years to get into affordable housing. And, you know, in the meantime, they're either hanging out at someone else's house or they have roommates, too many roommates.
Are there 4 people in that house? There's 5, but 2 of them are related. And they own the house. So that's how I think they're technically getting away with it.
So here I am, almost 40, and instead of living with like a family with a bunch of kids, I live with a bunch of roommates. And
I live with my 2 friends, Ryan and Andy.
Lots of roommates, lots of group homes. We have artists who live with their entire band, 6 or 7 of them, in a couple rooms, sharing the basement.
4 roommates, so for a total of 5.
I live in a 2-bedroom home, and I have 3 roommates.
I am looking at getting a roommate.
That's how they afford to do it.
And it was sort of like a constant like battle of like what's the like threshold of humans that we can handle living with so that we can afford to pay rent where we are. So yeah, right now I'm looking for a roommate.
Bikes, bands, and beer.
Bon Jovi is coming to Denver, to the Pepsi Center to be exact, in about a month, and the band wants some locals to warm up the crowd. A group from Fort Collins was chosen to open for Bon Jovi on April 14th. Their name, the Patty Fiasco. 9 News photojournalist Brian Wendland caught up with them.
I saw a man shake the world with his right leg while his left held us all captive in the moment. He was Elvis Aaron Presley, born Tupelo, Mississippi. I screamed with the other girls. I knew he was electric, and he cut something loose, and I floated over Memphis. And I swear to this day, when I hear his voice, I can feel it. Oh, I don't want to talk to God. I need to talk to him.
We started playing together in 2008. It's like a million years in band years. My mom found out about the contest, saw it advertised somewhere, and not only informed me about it, but basically called me every day until I had officially entered it. It's gotten a fair amount of publicity, which is cool. I think the Westward headline was Bon Jovi selects regional band to open at the Pepsi Center, and they're from Fort Collins, which I didn't know if that was like a knock or a, I don't know how to interpret that.
Kicking into place, that polyester workhorse that would bear my husband's weight while he drank his way through.
I lived in Fort Collins from about 2010 to 2013. Moved to Austin, Texas for a year and a half. Instead of moving back to Fort Collins, I actually moved to Wyoming in 2014 because I could have as much time as I needed to work on my music and my craft, and not having to dedicate so much of my time to side hustles and part-time jobs. I moved back to Fort Collins at the end of this summer to work at the Music District. It's definitely been a struggle, and you know, there are times where I've felt like a move was in order, again, in order to just be able to focus on the creative process as much as I feel like I need to. But there's just so much excitement and so much benefit to being around like-minded artists and other people in this community that it's impossible for me to leave at this point. I do think that this is an incredibly supportive community and a receptive community, and there's a really nice balance of the amount of live music and the amount of people that come out and support it. But yeah, in terms of like, I mean, nobody's just given me $1 million and said, make art. That's...
How about 100?
I mean, no.
Vocal music, throw your hands in the air. Vocal music, throw your hands in the air.
And Fort Collins is such a great community where we feel support so much. Going down South by Southwest, the Colorado Party, so much success in all of these bands. Financially, it's a different situation. It's so concentrated, it's so packed with bands that venues, they just can't pay bands what we need to survive, and so you really have to just play and make a lot of sacrifices.
If you look at it, many places they'll say to an artist, you know, we want you to play for free. Okay, and why? And they say, well, it's the exposure.
That's an interesting element to this equation. You know, we're not being paid to perform, we're unable to sell merchandise. Essentially, you know, they're throwing us this incredible publicity bone, but as so often, you know, in a situation as a local independent artist, there's money kind of goes by the wayside.
We had South by Southwest over the last week. There was no stipend, nothing for those folks to get down there and show their wares. So we beat the drum and say the, you know, Colorado music experience, etc. But you've got starving artists that are traveling 1,200 miles to show off their wares, and it's out of pocket.
He tells me I'm beautiful and I don't know why.
for the last 8 years. It was 40 plus hours a week that I was working, and it was really difficult to balance it. Yeah, even when I was on the road, I worked remotely, and so we'd be touring and I'd be going and sitting in a coffee shop and working the whole time that we were on tour just so that we could pay the bills.
Time now 6:50, 48 degrees out there, and President Obama isn't the only rock star touring Alaska this week.
All the way from Fort Collins, Colorado, Wasteland Hop is embarking on a 4-week musical journey around the last frontier. This indie hop band blends its funk-filled beats with soulful vocals that shatter the divide between rap and poetry. But don't take our word for it, ladies and gentlemen. Up and at 'em early for a mic check in the morning. Please welcome Wasteland Hop.
Only if you need to. We're constantly like budgeting and planning what is our next move. Like, can we afford to buy a van? Can we afford to go on the road? Can we afford to like print new t-shirts and print new stickers and print CDs? And record is a huge expense. And so it's like each little step of the way we're putting all of the money that we're making with the band back into the band.
If you're a young musician and you don't have a family, you can get away with some of that. But once you start having bands that have families and, kids start becoming involved, it gets a little harder to live that kind of bohemian lifestyle.
Tell them to ask the question should be, what is your daughter's name?
My daughter's name is Ella Aurelia LaFair. Ella's 5 and she's in kindergarten.
And let's turn 6.
She's about to turn 6. And so honestly, that's good. You want to get interviewed, huh?
Tell a nice joke.
Okay. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Orange.
Orange who?
Orange glad I didn't say kiwi.
In the modern state of music, you don't have to tour all the time. There's always something else you could be doing, I mean, part of me would like to just be making music and then making things around that music, if it's music videos or being involved in film or something like that, and then go tour, but do it more in selective things so I'm not gone all the time, because honestly I don't want to be totally gone. So, living life on the road, unless, if there was a way I could bring her with me, I'd do that, but, then it gets, that's like a whole nother world.
1, 2, 3, 4!
Look at other countries, and the government sets aside quite a bit so that certain people can be artists all year, and they don't have to be scrambling to be part-time artists. They can just be artists, and that would probably result in better artwork ultimately if you focus on that all the time.
If I'm working all the time and then we have band practice, but then it's like, when do you practice yourself, or when do you write new songs? And it's like constantly trying to juggle all of those things.
As long as their family life and situation can allow for it, they can push that envelope. But at a certain point, everyone needs to be making a living wage. Everyone needs to be able to go out to dinner once a month, for crying out loud.
That's a lovely idea.
That's a lovely idea. I know I think it's hard for us to imagine it being a reality. I think it is really entrenched in our culture and in our society that artists work for nothing.
Say we'll end in dust. The earth will bow to the sun, my Lord, it'll pass in time, I trust. I said, good Lord, this will pass in time, I trust. I will sail like old St. Peter, I will fight like Francis Drake. Bear up under each burden and return all treasure I take. I said, good Lord, I'll return all treasure I take.
Too often we ask our artists to do things for free, and they're giving up a lot of their time and effort, so it seems like a one-sided relationship. It should be a two-sided, a give and take, where they're doing things, and from that our natural response is to give in return.
I will find myself in Richmond, Barcelona, and San Juan. Cross the darkest oceans, work the harvest, and move on. I said, good Lord, how I keep moving on.
It got started at Christmas in 2009 when we had a family conversation around what happens to an art student who graduates and what was the benefit of the art student experience that gets lost. So what happens to most art students is they need to find a job and they end up in the retail business, oftentimes in hourly work, because they have this notion in their mind that they want to carve out times to do their artwork. And so they work oftentimes in restaurants and other hourly kind of occupations, and they never actually quite get back to their art. And they've never really been taught the business of art. How do they monetize their talent? And so there's this gap. And the final thing that was missing was there was a communal aspect to the experience that gets lost, and it becomes very individual. You're now on your own. So we looked at what those attributes were and said, what if we had a shared workspace for artists with a communal kitchen and potlucks and opportunities for them to gather that would address some of that missing piece once they graduate? And then what if we were to offer them an occupation in a cafe where now if they chose to, instead of working in a different location, they could work here. So now they're at least they're surrounded by art, and then provide classes and opportunity for them to showcase their art. So now they have a potential source of revenue there and educational opportunity around that. So that's the art lounges. They're actually places for people to hang out with two different looks and feel. One more, gold leaf, a certain kind of look and feel to that, and this one's much more mind-bending.
These are the things that are going to be eye-catching across the nation. It's not Beat Street, it's the artery that people are calling me about from Washington, D.C.
This is the new budget document we're looking to inform the council on, Labor Excess Fund.
Okay.
And then we have the starting balance.
I'm Cecil Gutierrez, and I am the mayor of the city of Loveland. We're known as one of the top arts communities in the country. A lot of community members had said, well, look at Fort Collins. We want to, our downtown needs to be like Fort Collins, or Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, or a variety of different other downtowns. And it really stuck with me that Bill Hutnett said, be who you are. Well, we are an arts community. So we decided to try to take a look at how we could focus on the arts within our downtown revitalization. For me, it was kind of personal in a way for supporting the art space. My career was as a high school band director. My wife is an artist. She spent her career as an art teacher in the school district. I thought about it, and I thought, had I not been a teacher and getting a steady income while practicing my art, my wife and I probably would have needed some of this kind of housing, and we'd have probably had to find other work as well. And the arts, quite frankly, provide about 8% of our workforce in the city. But we also found that quite a few of the artists that we had living in our downtown were also working in restaurants and some of the art galleries. So the artists were also our workforce.
Wear it again, Sam. Hey! I just wanted to let you know that tomorrow's the Golden Globes Day and we're gonna have a little gala. I work at Wear It Again, Sam. It's vintage clothing and costume rentals. I have a loft and I've been there for 12 years. And I feel very, very lucky that I found my apartment. Whoa! Oh my gosh! My landlord's amazing. I'm very, very grateful for him. And I'm so protective of where I live. I guess I'm worried because, yeah, I'll have to move farther away from Old Town, and I feel like it's been such a sweet place for me to live right near here, and I'm like in a band that plays in Old Town, and I've worked here and a couple of other places in Old Town, and it just would kind of be like a shame to be removed from where I feel like pre-linked in, because it's too expensive to live close to where I work.
Creative people like to be around creative people.
Old Town, of course, is the hub of this small city of 150,000 people with Colorado State University. The people who work in these, the restaurants and the bars and all of that are service workers, and they typically don't make high wages. And for them, affordable housing is critical, but increasingly the neighborhoods adjacent to Old Town or places like Buckingham, Alta Vista, Andersonville, there's not affordable housing available. So people are being pushed out.
All of these great things that we have in our community also make it very unattainable for a lot of people. That's just a reality.
It's been $800 a month, $1,000 a month, $1,200 a month, and now suddenly they're $2,200 a month. And it just shot up in the last 18 months.
It sort of seems like since I've been here, which has only been like 6 years, but that it's been sort of like an exponential curve going up on my rent, so.
What is that? Whatever that is, I love.
Over time, I've seen a lot more pride in the arts and culture, and that makes me really happy. And I've seen more pop up, you know, just the fact that bands, beers, and bikes are now on the tagline. It's not just all about brew.
Put your hands together for Wasteland Hop.
I'm going to stop talking so you can hear the slow case.
And feel the love for Collins Shatterproof. They're from right here. They're going out on tour next month, but they'll be back to play more for you.
Yeah, if it came down to it, I would absolutely couch surf. I would do whatever it takes to be able to play music.
And how dare
I think we've invited people through things like FOCO MX and other things to show that we are this cultural mecca, but there's nothing behind that that's providing that support and that sustenance for the artist. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge here.
All my money pretty much goes towards day-to-day survival.
I actually didn't play my instrument for a lot of years because I needed to be responsible and get a real job, and sort of magically fell back into it, and yeah, it makes my heart very happy.
Either the artists move into their career path as an artist, or they put it on the shelf and move into a more practical career.
Let's give it up for our very own Fierce Bad Rabbit!
A classic example of that was Chris Anderson from Fierce Bad Rabbit. You know, out of any band around, they had the most notoriety, and the buzz was they would make it. Chris and his wife finally moved to Boston because she got a better job. And he's, while he's still dabbling in music, he's working in real estate.
Money follows creativity.
People move into a neighborhood because it is cool and appealing. It's cool and appealing because of the arts, and then the artists who made it appealing can no longer afford to live there.
Artists will move into a building that maybe other people really don't want to live in because it's cheaper to do that.
And the money comes in and runs out the creative people.
You know, the people that are fortunate, that make even enough money to live in certain parts of town start saying, you know, I don't know what's going to happen if it's 1 or 2 years from now or 5 years from now till I won't be able to live in Fort Collins.
What I do worry about is my ability to remain in this community.
I didn't think I was going to get priced out of Old Town, but it's happening right now as I speak.
If you look at the growth of Fort Collins, you know, Forbes magazine had us as one of the top places to retire and live. A lot of different, you know, accolades throughout the country, which brings an influx of people. And it's not low income, it's usually people with a relatively medium or high income level.
I moved to Denver for 5 years, and when I came back, I was just like, man, like, I don't know what's going on here.
You know, that's the downside of raising awareness of a music scene. The downside of economic development. You know, economic development creates more interest and more influx.
It used to be a lot easier for a bunch of artists just to have like little houses around downtown, and yeah, you just hear music coming out of like there was this one really great house that was like over by the Alley Cat in an alley, and you could get loud there, and like there'd be music there all the time, and like Peace Officer and stuff I think was posted up there. And it was just a different time.
I have friends in New Orleans right now who are dealing with the same exact thing, and a changing of the community type that might not be interested in having live music or funeral marches down their street, you know, except between, you know, 2 and 4 on Sunday.
We don't allow street performers, buskers. And in a lot of communities, Atlanta, New York, Boston, New Orleans, they have a really rich history of buskers on the streets, and they make a pretty decent living doing it. So we say, yeah, we're going to pay a few people from Streetmosphere, but if someone wants to set up on the corner of Mountain and wherever, we're going to take their stuff away because they can't do that without the blessing of the city.
Well, it's a good thing you're not on Bourbon Street because then you'd have to tip me for taking my picture.
I love playing in parks, and like in places like Denver, there's plenty of like just all these parks around where you can just set up music and start playing. Also, if I could get away with more do-it-yourself venues, like you know, if I could just go talk to a business owner who like just owns a warehouse, and I could just set up in there, and like the police would be fine with that, that'd be cool. But the police they have never been fine with that in this town.
With the U+2 law, the city's almost created this exclusiveness where unless you're within the wealthy bracket who can afford to live with only 1 or 2 other people in a house that has multiple rooms in it, you're excluded from being able to afford to live here.
I mean, scenes don't develop out of everything being pure Ritz, you know, that turns into a tourist attraction, not a, you know, community.
My father's a great jazz musician. They call the cops my father. He's not even playing the lead, he's even playing electric bass. It's acoustic. We bought the motherfucking house in 1960, and now you call the cops in 2013? Get the fuck out of here.
Almost everywhere where we went, one of the cautions was about the gentrification of your downtown.
With the Fort Collins Musicians Association, we hear a lot of the needs of our musicians, but also creatives at large, because we all work together a lot and do a lot of projects together. So one big topic that's been happening a lot lately in this scene in particular is affordable housing, the gentrification, and people being forced out of neighborhoods, especially creatives.
We found that some really top-notch musicians that have been here have picked up and relocated elsewhere to communities where they know they have a chance. And that's unfortunate. We've got some really talented people here. World class.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now we're talking about the Whippoorwill Patty Fiasco. I had the really good fortune of hanging out in Boise with her for the Tree Fort. And those Whippoorwill girls are fun. They're pros. I mean, they're just great at what they do.
We've been driving, counting miles, freeway sounds and exit signs, empty miles and passing lanes. Don't it start to feel strange with headlights projecting you? No one's expecting you. No one knows you've left some destination. Spot beneath the trees, just lay your head back. Get a breath or two of sleep, and someday soon I promise a room that big enough for two will roll around some till the sun comes. This is what we wanted, now we got it. Ain't it good to be around empty house? But I've never felt so at home. Tell me, love me, as often as you'd like. It'll never get old. It'll never get old.
In all the conversations that I've had with people from really vibrant arts communities, if it boils down to one question, what made that a great scene? What made that happen? Every time people say affordable housing.
We need to have affordable space or nothing's going to happen. And that means affordable creative space, affordable living space.
Not so far away, didn't have a dollar. Not to spend or to save, we were sleeping in the park, singing to the dark, with dreams like diamonds so high in the sky. But you're by my side, you're my green-eyed gold mine shining, and that payday sunshine is coming. Your clothes on the floor with mine. Wanted, now we got it. Ain't it good to be around empty house? But I've never felt so at home. Love me as often as you'd like. It'll never get old. It'll never get old.
We have amazing bands here. So if we can keep that sense of community, and if CSU can play a part in that, working with Bohemian and working with the Fort Collins Music Association, together we actually all have a part to play. I'm leading a task force the university's asked me to head up to try and implement some affordable housing solutions in the community. If we can bring land to the mix, and if we can make that free or low cost to be developed, and in return we get a percentage of that for our faculty and staff to be involved in this, we think that does two things. One, it helps us with our recruiting, it helps us with bringing in creative, interesting people, and it helps our lower paid employees have affordable housing so they can live in our community. That's really important. But also, we'll leave some other percentage of it for the larger community, and that could be for artists, probably would be.
For a vital downtown, you need some of that workforce housing.
When I forget, I hope that you remind me when I'm struggling. I hope you get behind me, 'cause we've been through some shit. And I'll admit, there are times I didn't think that we'd make it. Oh, this is what we wanted, now we got it. Ain't it good to be around empty house? But I've never felt so at home. Tell me, love me, as often as you like. It'll never get old. It'll never get old.
the city owns, you know, a quarter of the lots downtown. Like they own a ton of real estate downtown. If they decided to lease out their stuff at reasonable rates or even sell it at reasonable rates, that would help mitigate the damage that's being done by billionaires competing for real estate. I think that what goes in those buildings is more important than the goddamn real estate price, and maintaining that ecosystem so that the businesses can thrive should be where what people think about.
Our rent will not go up because this building is privately owned by investors who have invested in us.
My name's Kent Bradley, and I would consider myself the impact investor for the Downtown Artery, co-founder of the concept, and overall coach. We were chosen in the state of Colorado as the social impact business of the year in arts, culture, and entertainment. Out of the 300 companies that were selected, we were voted as the People's Choice Award for all the state of Colorado, for all businesses. So that told me that people understood the impact, the social impact, the social well-being that arts has in a community.
This is yard sale. This is going to be at least 20 different artists, all having their own booth set up and all priced below $100. So buy more art.
The intent was to have working artists have a place to show their work and actually work, as well as eventually, through employment, have an ownership in the actual business. I went to West Point for my undergrad, and I spent my time in the military and focus a lot of my effort today as a physician in the public health arena around well-being and what does it take for the well-being of an individual or a community. Pretty much all the staff members are involved in the arts in some way. That's part of this aspect of our ecosystem. Like Nathaniel, he does ballroom dancing and he's also an artist. And they can speak to their art as well, or maybe they have art here in the retail space. I've come to appreciate how through our children and their interest in music and the arts, how important arts are to the lifeblood, and that's why we have the name the Downtown Artery, play on the words with my medical background and the art being the lifeblood of a community, because it is one of those things that is somewhat uniquely human, is our ability to create and appreciate creativity. We are making a statement that this is a value to us as a community, and we're going to demonstrate that by buying the local art and paying for the concerts, because the musicians should get paid.
People download their music for free and try to get into all their shows for free, because it's still one of those sectors that I don't feel like a lot of people view as like a full-time opportunity. And that ties into a whole different thing that I think is even more related than affordable housing, and that's putting value on musicians and putting value on creatives.
You're listening to 90.5 KCSU. My name is DJ Silent G, and I'm actually in the studio here with Right Minded. Just a little intro. Right Minded is a hip-hop group from Fort Collins that formed in 2015 when members Sam Mouton and Jesse Neth branched out from a local hip-hop collective to create acoustic hip-hop. We have 4 members, and 1 year later they released their first album, I Above, and they're joining me in studio today. So hello, Right Minded.
Yo, what's up?
So we have Summertime next, right?
Nice. Cool.
All right.
We chose the for-profit model because One was the message we believe the community should send to the artists, in that their art is intrinsically of value and their work is of value, that we should pay for that.
A way to lessen the escalation of the real estate prices is to start treating it less like how much money can I make off of this thing, and start treating the area more like an ecosystem.
A vibrant arts culture is a critical multiplier of benefit to the community, both directly and indirectly. And if it is a big multiplier of benefit, how do we nurture that through proper incentives?
We should be saying, how do I make a successful area where this business that I've created can thrive for many, many years to come, and it helps all the other businesses around it thrive. And you'll see real estate prices continue to go up, but it'll be in proportion to what everyone in the area is contributing to that pie.
Way back when, decipher life's meaning as an navigate through the madness. In the past, I would skip class and just twist grass, getting lit. Laughing with the kinfolks with the instrumental. That was making sure when it is the bliss of lyrics scripted. Grown out till I miss it, so slow down and relive the old. Close my eyes, zone out, reminisce on the golden time.
If you're investing into something, you can get a reasonable financial return and an outsized social return. And I think that should be good enough.
When you have a SCFD, you create $70 million of rollover dollars into a community each year.
I looked at the polls afterwards, and Fort Collins was pretty much a go, but it was like a countywide initiative. So, if you look at the rest of the county, it was pretty much a no. And so that's like something to think about too, like engaging not just, Fort Collins and city limits, but Larimer County as a whole, like engaging them in the whole cultural revolution that's happening in northern Colorado.
I think if people realize it's 1 penny on $10, I think that they'll want to support the SCFD.
Letting them see the value of it, in every part of the county, because, there's a lot of musicians, even at Folk MX, we've got musicians coming from Eaton, from Wellington, from all over, from Greeley, like everywhere. And it's exciting to see that there's music thriving in those places too.
There should be a mental health facility, but along the way there should also be activities that we can do that might prevent us from needing one.
Well, I climbed up to the devil's causeway to see what I could see from 12,000 feet. To see what I could see from 12,000 feet.
And that continues to be our intent, is not to raise the rent. However, a couple of things have transpired. This building happens to be one of the oldest commercial buildings in Fort Collins. And a lot of it had to be from the inside out redone. Those costs are pretty significant, and the owners of the building had to invest in all that in order to bring it up to code. And in the process, as we put more money into the renovations, the mortgage increased, and therefore it started to become a fairly significant challenge for us. The property tax before the increase were around $18,000, and now they're about $50,000. in 1 year. And so that our taxes now per month are more than the leases we have from the artists. One of the things I think from a policy perspective that should be considered is when businesses invest in a part of the city and they're making that stretch to make that investment like us, and, that there is some consideration of a period of time in which valuation occurs, so it doesn't happen all at once.
At the end of the day, what will end up happening, which I'm excited about, is the people who can't afford to be downtown are going to go somewhere else and make another place cool.
Worst case scenario, and it may not actually be a worst case, we may have to go somewhere else at some point in time, you know, like the Lyric Cafe is doing.
The bad thing is it's going to drive out a bunch of local businesses, and you're going to get a bunch of like Crate and Barrels and chain restaurants, and you know, like maybe even high-end chain restaurants like the Kitchen or whatever. And they'll all go in downtown. They'll all be owned by billionaires, and it'll be like this hoity-toity sort of place, like downtown Boulder.
You know, I spent the last few years working in Boulder in the music community, in addition to being in Fort Collins. And so I saw, like, you know, people are always like, Boulder is like 10 years ahead of Fort Collins, and like looking at how musicians and creatives are kind of priced out of that market and looking at what we're looking at right now, I think it's really good to get in at this point.
You know, we can look just around the corner to see the impact of just letting it go.
It's something that's coming this way if we're ready for it or not.
We can look to Portland, we can look to Seattle, and we can look at communities that have value. We can look to Europe, you know, at places that really value that culture and have created economic benefits and incentives and opportunities for artists in order to keep them where they belong, at home.
When we started taking a look at that, an affordable housing project for artists who were not just artists, but they were also our workforce in the downtown, became very, very attractive.
Hello, welcome to ArtSpace. Come on in. ArtSpace Loveland Lofts is the first art space to be built in the state of Colorado. And for those that don't know, ArtSpace is a nonprofit headquartered in Minneapolis that specializes in developing, usually rehabbing and developing old buildings to use for affordable housing for artists. This Loveland is a little unique because this is actually one of the buildings that was built from the ground up. It's a great community. I love that we are attached to the Feed and Grain, which at this point we've heard is going to be an arts incubator, which would be nice because it would tie really well into this whole community. Okay, so we're on the 3rd floor. And what's nice too is, you know, we hang and decorate the walls with our art, which is nice. This is Sandra Gisanti. She's a painter. Hey, Sandra.
Hi. Come on in. I call this art spaciousness. I was living in a very small apartment before this, and in order to paint, I had to set up a card table and then take it down every time I was done. We didn't see the apartments until they gave us the keys, and when I walked in, I just couldn't believe it. I was really happy because now I'm all set up, so if I want to paint, I just walk over here and I paint.
We have this public plaza, which is nice. It brings the community together. We, as artists here, recognize that the community of Loveland made this possible for us, that they are supporting us in many ways. They're subsidizing our lifestyle. And so we have also, as a community, really tried to reach out and do things for the community. In the summer, we have some of the various musicians that live in the building have all set up here on the stage and just jammed.
On any given evening, there's liable to be somebody hanging out too, and you fire up the grill, you make some chicken, somebody brings something else, man, next thing you know, you got dinner. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm a musician, and I don't hang on the wall very nicely. I've tried it a few times, it's painful, and I got no spiritual value from it whatsoever. But anyway, I get to use the space, so once a month I host a songwriter showcase in here. Every month there's different art in here. We bring in a couple different songwriters, and we share songs and stories about songs, and we have a very interactive thing with the audience.
And it's really wonderful to be residing with all of these great artists because there's always that creative energy happening around here. And I'm getting so used to it now that it's become pretty normal to me, but every once in a while I realize that most people don't live this way. Yeah.
I haven't been in since this particular show was hung. So I like that word hung. For, the first time I came in here, they have these little parties, hanging parties. And that just, reminded me of like the Old West or something. So I came down to watch it.
When I was a child, I used to have these visions of these bold, swirling patterns. I would dream of them, and sometimes I would see them like on blank screens, like a TV screen or before a movie would start. And so I realized after a while that that's what I was trying to do.
Art Space says, well, it's your choice how you want to live. And if you want to live with gardens instead of, grass, then that's great. And so it's nice. So we now have little gardens.
It was incredible to move into a place and have them say, now you got the 2-bedroom because you're going to use one for your recording studio, right? And we expect you're probably going to rehearse your band here and you're going to make noise, hopefully not after like 10:30, 11, unless your neighbors are all in your place. So that's refreshing.
As a filmmaker working at this level, the reality of the fact is that every time I've started a film, the first thing to go in my life was my home, because that was always the biggest overhead I had. And so it meant, usually moving in with my folks. I'm currently directing a feature-length documentary on music in Colorado. And I'm hitting year 3 on this project. And what's nice is I started it by moving into a place here. So instead of giving up a place, I actually moved into a place, and I've been here now for 2 years, starting year 3. And it's just an amazing thing to be able to have a home and do your work. I think one of the unexpected benefits of living in this community has been not feeling alone all the time.
Right. It's not like when you move into any other place where you just go and live there, and then if you have a neighbor, you say hi. This is a community, and it's really like a social experiment. And when we first moved in here, everybody was, some people were shy, didn't know what to do. But now that we've been here a little while, everybody knows everybody else, and the spirit of community is happening more and more.
Whether it's music or film or any of the visual arts, it's like it's hard to have security, and it's hard to have a sense of stability in your life when there's so much upheaval that comes with starting a new phase in your career, or starting a new band, or maybe going out on tour, or in my case, starting a new film. And so what's nice is within these walls and within this community is it's a very judgment-free zone. We all understand, that there, our situations and our fortunes kind of fluctuate.
So it's important that you understand this isn't something where the rent is, goes down depending on whether I have gigs or not. There's a steady amount that you have to pay every month. Thank God it is less than market rent.
A lot of the artists here are single. There are a few families and some married people, but they're actually
the majority of people
here are single people, single artists,
Because no one will have us.
I don't think that's an accident. What does that say about us?
It's bringing in an investment into housing, and it meets a number of criteria for us. It really helped maintain that workforce housing. It brought affordable housing to the downtown. It brought a project that with $8 to $10 million investment into our downtown. So it met a whole lot of, it checked a lot of the boxes that we had for downtown revitalization.
And that's what this art space represents. It represents a community saying, we value our artists, we know you bring something special to the community, and we want to make sure that you have a good place to live and that you will have enough security to be able to stay here in the community and not have to leave as prices go up.
I don't look at it as charity. I look at it as a community saying, you know what, we value the work that we do. We understand that you don't get paid jack for it. And so we're going to do what we can to help you make this work if you're going to make the decision to, keep trying to do this crazy shit of making art.
I mean, this was all a new adventure driven by one clear mission, and that is to create an ecosystem that honors the breadth of creativity that the community has to offer and provide something that's of value to the community. That was our objective. And do it in a way that creates economic sustainability and value back to the artists themselves who are choosing to work in this ecosystem.
Artists, they bring that excitement, they bring culture, they bring innovation, they bring, young people.
And we are providing a valuable service to this community. And the city of Fort Collins, the community in Fort Collins, prides itself on being artistic and supporting the arts.
They're capitalizing on the artists being in the community, and the connection needs to be made to them, how they need to invest in that. And there are two different ways. One is by encouraging better wages for artists, by paying for artists, by educating people, by charging for shows.
Things like Atlanta did with free healthcare. Things like providing studio space. Things like providing music venues that can hold a righteous number of people so that everybody can make some money off of that.
I love the idea of a free outdoor park show because that'll bring people to music that may not ever have been interested in music before. But if there's an ability to generate a profit that can go back into organizational funds that support artists or educational funds, those are the kinds of incentives that can eliminate expenses for artists and therefore create more opportunity for them to have cash flow to live in a city like this.
Something to sustain these folks and show that true cultural, artistic support.
And the music district, they're providing a lot of phenomenal resources, which is excellent. And we're launching a series of topics that help artists understand everything from managing your bank account to contracts.
Now the conversation changes to, great, we've got awareness, people are recognizing that this is a great cultural place to see local music. What are we going to do about educating the business owners and the community members about paying for music and allowing our artists to continue to live in this community and play in this community?
A lot of these organizations are offering things to people and families where they, by participation in the arts, are becoming better neighbors and friends and moms and dads. I think that it's important to make sure that the people that are working to make this community a great place to live, work, and play can afford to live here.
This is a really serious thing that's going to impact all of us, and it's something we should be talking about, it's something we should be thinking about, and it's something we should be working about together so that we can continue to live in the city that we all love and do what we love doing. So.
Luckily, my parents had the resources to provide me with the experiences, going to the opera and going to the ballet and going to the symphony and all of those sorts of things. And I just knew how I would have been a different person without that.
When you go out to take a look at the thing that you love called music or painting or film or whatever that happens to be, theater, think about what it takes to do that. Because we've got people that spend 80 hours a week on their art just to be able to make you happy.
The strangest thought today as I was riding on a bus. Well, I thought there was 7 billion people, and each one is just like us. Except sometimes I think I'm different, sometimes I feel a little weird. Well, there's gotta be some cloud-shaped wisdom in this mess between my ears. right now.